Hello and welcome to the channel again. Today I'm going to explain to you how to write HTML forms using dynamic components. And to do so, I have already copied a form of the internet and made some modifications to it, added some stuff and a second field set. And what this looks like in the browser is this. We have a personalia section and we have an address section and the submit button. So inside the HTML form, when we're looking at it, usually HTML forms have an action, and this is sending the form data to a specific page. But since we're on a single page application, that's not exactly what we want. What we want is to just get an object out of the form, and usually you're not sending it anywhere because you're actually doing an AJAX request to the server, to an API endpoint, send the data over to there. So I'm going to remove this first thing and very important. And this leaves us with a form and a field set and several inputs. The legend can actually be ignored for the moment. It's just there so we recognize what we're doing on the HTML page. It can be there, but it's not really necessary. So now that we're having that, first of all, I would actually like to create or break down the page. So we have the label and the input, we have the field set, and we have the form. And I already have a write components form component. That's just a demo for what we're doing today. And as a second thing, I would now actually like to, create the field, create a representation for the field set. So I'm going into here and I would go with a form field set declaration .class.ts. That's just a file we're going to write. And in here, I'm going to export class form field set declaration. And oops, there was the error. I did not autocomplete. The form field set declaration, and in here for the field set, what we are needing, I'm going to split it to the right side so we see what we're doing. Usually now at the moment the field set takes in 100%. And if we are using a framework like Twitter Bootstrap, it would be possible to give it a width, which is a number and which is usually 12. DTH typo again. And then there I can duplicate that because there are several of those. There's XS width, there is SM width, and there is MD width, there is I think XL width, and there is what's the last one, LG width. And this already gives us the possibility to actually go or program the field set in a responsive manner. I don't think I'm going to implement this here in this special position. What I would usually do is go with ng class, and then is like there's a function called get field set class, and that we're going to implement in the corresponding TypeScript file, and currently go with any. I know it's something different, and this just returns what was that in Bootstrap? Yeah, actually just the width. It's call followed by the number that we're having. Yeah, so I'm going to leave that away. So for the moment, I'm just going to return col12, and you could usually write that for yourself and just put in like the corresponding X's with stuff. I think the width is okay with 12. The rest should actually not be set, and is also not mandatory, which means that we can put in question marks and make them not mandatory. Now, if you have a field set in here, you would usually want to make it active or inactive. So there should be an easy possibility uh, to, well, just define the stuff, set it to active, and when we're looping over this stuff, then you can actually turn them on and turn them off during the life cycle of the program. So as an example, if you don't need the address field and maybe there's a checkbox input here, you can actually allow to activate or deactivate this complete block here. And then we have the in here inside the form thing, I need to set an array of form field declarations, and that is a form field declaration array, and default it should actually just be empty, and because we're going to fill it up with dynamic components, it's actually inputted from the outside, and that's the main thing that our form is going to take in as an input to build up the form that we going to write. And then I can actually here go with ng4 equals let form field set of form field set declarations. And so now we're looping over the entire thing, and already the second field set is not necessary anymore, meaning the second field set down here, because we are going to hand it over by configuration and not by template. Also, we have this legend here, so we're going to give it a title. I'm going to set it for the moment to an empty string. Title might also not be necessary. If this thing is not set, then I can just ignore it, and in here I can go with the form field set dot title. This goes out and it goes here, and also we have to check if this thing is only set if there is one. So if this thing is declared. So now we can actually we have set this thing. And then also very important is like the label and inputs that we want to have in our specific form section. And because there are several of them, I'm going to set up another class in here, and I'm going to name this form inputs input declarations, and I'm going to set this to a form input declaration array, and also this is an empty array to start with. And I have not written this, so that's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to, let's not call it form input, because an input, it might not be an input, it might be an input, a text area, a checkbox, file drop down section. It might be something completely different. So let's just call this form field declaration because it's actually a field inside the form. So, and then there's like the form field declaration dot class dot ts. Copy this because I'm going to need it maybe. Export class form field declaration class. And now inside the form field declaration, I'm mostly going to have the same things concerning Bootstrap again. And this is just to style the form fields, put two form inputs next to each other instead of underneath. And then, well, Boolean flag, if this thing is active, might also be necessary or helpful if you want to, you know, hide something. Title is not necessary. We're coming to that soon because now we have to write we have to put the marked text here into a separate specific component. And then here with the form field declaration, I have now declared that and I can import it and we're good to go. So now we're going down to the form field stuff. And now I have to go to the Angular side and go with ng template and ng4 with an index. I just don't know exactly usually how this is written, and I go with ng template. I just have to search it quickly. I know it's somewhere also in the code, but here we go. I just want to loop over those templates, but I don't need like the ng template stuff inside. So this is what we're doing. And in here, instead of the contact, which is from the demonstration, I go with the specific field set, and inside the field set, there should be the async can go away as well. I don't need that one because it's not coming from the server. And in here, I go over the form field set, form field declarations, and then this is just one of the form fields that I'm using. And we're looping over stuff already. So now I would actually like to now write one of those or a component that just represents an input with a label and a input or like ID, name, and some additional features. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to write a new directory and write components. This is just the prefix for like the demo stuff that I'm doing currently, and I go with form input, and I'm writing one of those. So where is it? It's here, new file, component dot ts. Yes, I add it to Git, and the same thing goes with the HTML file, and write that in as well. And then we're going to export class write component form input component, and in the add component section, there's the selector app, and so import this stuff here, then put a quote here, remove this, and then in the template URL, just go with HTML. And now I have to put this thing into the module, which is down here. And then I can go up again and we're actually good. And then I am going to copy the thing that is declared here. I'm going to copy that into the form input, and just to make sure that this takes an entire line, I'm going to surround it in a div. And if the div is here, usually the label and the input are next to each other, so I won't need the two breaks on the end, which was dirty from the beginning. Anyway, good thing here would also be to write a that was the wrong one. To write a BEM tag, so it's just recognizable afterwards. So I go with the main. I give this thing here a call it label. And I do this with down here as well, input, so they're recognizable inside the HTML output. And then I can override the CSS for every occurrence, and I don't really have to worry about that. Now, one thing that bothered me from the beginning inside the template was like the first name here always is like, I don't know, it does not have a min width. It might also be better suited on top, and also we could now in here as an input sort of define if where the label position is as an example, input, and go with something like public is label on top, which is a boolean, and then go with two ways, one where the label is on the left inline and one where the label is on top. But we're not doing that. I want to keep it simple for the sake of this tutorial, but this is just something you could actually do, so you can easily have a general purpose component, and you can, depending on what you're using it for, switch between those two states. So now the right components form input. So we need several things. One is actually a label. That's one thing we're definitely going to need. Input and public label, that is a string. And I can actually leave that empty. And if I hand over the label, I also need to put that into the HTML, and already this is set up. Then there might be something like a name of the form input value. And in here, wait a minute, I might also split the screen here, so just for better visibility. And then we have the name here, and I can actually remove that and go with name. I think there might be the possibility to save the curly brackets, and we're good. And usually I would say that the ID, because the name is usually inside a form, should actually be unique. So we don't need that. And on the for up here, I don't know exactly if that works here, but it usually should. I can also, it's label for the name, and the name is the stuff that we're handed over by input. Input type text is logical. I could actually, the field here, I don't know if there's an autocomplete. You could hand it over as a type, but then I would just create a form numeric input component, and so also for simplicity, I would leave it as it is here. And now there's one thing I want to do that I mentioned before. I would like to create a SCSS file. Click on add. Then here we go with style URLs. That one is an array, comma. I have to remove this one, then enter this here, .scss and comma. So now I have a style that I can use, and I've inserted the BEM text before, so I would tell it here that the label should have a min width of, let's say, 200 pixels. Yeah, once I'm doing that. So now I have declared a form input component that is, you know, you can hand over everything you want. We're not complete here because we're only handling the inputs. At one point we have to go and check if the stuff changes, but that's something else. We're coming back later. And so in our form component, we go over the form field declaration. And the form field declaration was, where was it? Here. Also needs to have declared what type it is. And here's the place where the dynamic components come in, or the dynamic component. So this is a dynamic component. It's of type any, because at that moment there is like this write component form input, but there's might be a form checkbox, a form text area, a form file input, a form, you name it, whatever you need. So we currently don't know exactly what it is, and this is sort of not an optional field. So in the declaration, I usually go with I have like just an empty component that I hand over. But yeah, we don't really need that. So for the moment, I'm just going to make it optional, and yeah, hope for the best. So in here we go with SSO dynamic, and I am the SSO dynamic takes a dynamic component, and this one is in the form field. And in here I have the form component, and I am already set. And now I can actually move all the stuff down here that was set up plus the second field set. I can move that into the configuration. So I'm going down to my page on the start page, and on the start page I have defined the write forms component. Now this has like an input of form field declarations, and now we're going to write this one. And let me also, oops, no, that's not what I wanted. So that's what I want. Form field set declaration array, and it's an empty array, and I would go with this dot init form field set declaration. Actually, just a single one, not. It's an array, but it's just one declaration. And yes, so I write this method here. It does not return anything. And so now I need a way to set those up. First of all, it's just an array. And then in here, I go with a form field set declaration because I want to create a new one. And it would actually be good to have a constructor that takes a parameter over. Now you pardon me because I have already done that stuff and it's somewhere in here, and you might have seen that before on the autocomplete. So no, that was the wrong one. From field. So I'm just going to copy this constructor and I am going to put that in my form field set declaration down here. And what this does is it takes in all the parameters that I had set up. We might, yeah, it's actually good to know that it's the bootstrap width. I would call that helpful. So just let me copy those over here, and if somebody sets them, then they're going to be automatically set correctly. And so that one's renamed, and then I don't need the form component. There's an active that is a Boolean. Then there is a title that is a string, and I have the form field declaration that is a I hand it over or not, that is just an array. And it will just go over the parameters of the options and just copy it into my declaration. So that's the good thing here. And then in my start page, now I have the possibility to hand over an object, and we are going to just do the two with the title. And the one was, what was it? Personalia. And the second one was, there's a comma missing, address. So that's now the input for the legend thing. And then inside the form field declaration, I have on the field set declaration, I have the form field declaration. And here it's sort of the same thing. So I go with a new form field declaration, and it also should actually take a options that it does not currently have. So I'm referring to the wrong one. So wait a minute. I'm going to copy this constructor and put it into here. And then oh, there's a form field. Okay, yeah, so that was just double. Sort of put in some redundancy. The form field is a dynamic component. This actually replaces the stuff down here. The bootstrap with block I can copy over from the other section as we have done before. We have replaced that because the name is much more clearer, so that one should be fine as well. Remove that import up here for clarity's sake. Active Boolean, same thing. Title is not given here. That's the title would actually be the name of the input field inside the form input component. So we're removing that, and we have it just moves into the dynamic component that we're handing over. And I can put any dynamic component in here, which is also a good thing. Okay, so back to the page here now. form field declaration class, and just going to ignore the rest. What I don't like is if this thing ends with the name class. I think that's not really good. So I leave the two forms at the beginning because there's another class already existing that has the same form. But in here, we are now should be good, and complains about this name here. No suggestions. Might be not. Let me just remove that for a minute. Form field declarations. No, same thing. Very good. And don't know why it complains. Yeah, it's not a new whatever. It's an array again. That was the reason. And in here now, I can hand over the object again. And what do we have here? We have the form field that is a dynamic component, and the width is default set to 12, which is okay, and active is default set to true. So I just need to declare the form field and go with a new dynamic component. And special thing here, that's the one we have written before, so we know what it is. This time I can hand it over instead of any. I can clearly define what it is. Import statement, and this has the same thing already built in, where you can declare what it is. So component type again is this write components form input component, and now we can actually hand over the inputs into the specific component. And for this, I'm going over here, and as far as I remember, we just have two fields. A minute, that was a bit hasty as well. Label and name. And so we're gonna copy this one, put it in here. Label, what was the first one? Can't remember. In the right form component here, first one is like label was first name. And then there's the second one from here was the name of the input field. And gonna see what it is. This is just F name. That comes from the internet. I would always write stuff out. No abbreviations, clean code rule. So it's not input, it's inputs, and we should be fine. Again, and now I can just copy that stuff that I have already declared. So then I have my second one, which is last name. I could go with L name, but I would rather write it out. So it's last name. Then I copy this again. Now I'm really quick in writing the form. There's like email. This is email, and I'm fine with that. And it's the last element is the birthday. And for the birthday, yeah, so we're fine. So now I have to copy this stuff over, and for the moment I just copy all of it, and then I'm going to delete some stuff. That was just the content. Oh, that was, wait a minute. Let's live. Oh man, copied the wrong one. Wait a minute. So down to here. Title, address. Now there should be two titles next to each other. Address can get a comma. This thing can disappear. And like, because we have to clone those again, I delete everything in here and I go with whatever is in here. So this one is street, and I call it street. And then I copy this section again, and I have a house number. That is house number, because I hastily copied it over before. This one's wrong. This should actually also be for house number, city here as well. So that was just a mistake. And we are going to leave out the submit button because we have to write that again. We have to find a solution for that one, but I'm coming back to it. Yeah, so we have the house number and then we have the city. So good example here for the bootstrap with stuff. House number and street would usually be on the same line. And as an example, you could set the width here to 9 and the width here to 3. And they're both on one line, and you should be good if you actually want to have two separate fields for those at all. So let's go back to the page and see where we are standing. I also have to check. This is currently my command line. ngserve was currently not re-rendering what I have been writing, so I have to run ngserve again for the moment. And I excuse myself, it's just going to take about 30 seconds until the page is re-rendered again. Compilation was successful, now it's generating browser application bundles. It's just going to take a while. So I apologize for that. And we have two errors currently. Dynamic component or undefined is not assignable to dynamic component. This is because inside the code we have declared on the form field form component. That's this one here. We have declared it optional, which it should not be. And also down here, you should actually really name this thing. And we're running into the problem because now I need to declare a dynamic component that is empty. And I think I can just create a new dynamic component and ignore anything for the time being. Let's see, it goes again. What does it say? Form component is missing form field declaration, but required form field declaration. So so in here it asks for a form field. That's a dynamic component. And I really need that. So what's the error? Form field active, and it asks for the form field. Form component is missing. Oh. I have to check this one. No, that was the wrong one. So on the start page, first of all, I'm having form component is missing form field declaration. Yeah, so now I have mixed up two things, and I think that here's the mistake. apologize for that. The other one already stands. So now we're done. I can go back to the page and I see that we have the address and the address. There might be something wrong. So I have to now go back and in my form component that I have, I can remove the stuff that is not necessary anymore. So I can remove this stuff here and going back, there's a template error still. Yeah, there's the field set is not closed. So I'm very good. So now it does not render anything. We have to find out why this is happening. It actually shouldn't happen. And it's a good example on how to debug such stuff. So this one's correct now. ng on init tells me that this thing is set, and I assume. Wait a minute. So the form field declaration with personalia and down here the title address is visible. And what it does not do here is it does not loop over the dynamic component. So just to try out stuff, I'm going to enter an X here. And if this thing is there, we're seeing that there are 4 X's, which is also good. And then in the form field declaration, there should be a form component. That should also be good. So I'm going back to the X I had just created before. And instead of the X, I am going to output the form field in a JSON format. So we can see what actually goes out there. So, and to improve the readability, I can put it into a div. We're going to remove that anyway, and it might also be necessary to put in, no, this one's good. Otherwise, you could actually also do a PRE tag around that formats the JSON output correctly. So bootstrap width is 12, active is true, form field inputs, this is the dynamic component, or it should be, and it isn't. So wait a minute, going back, now I would assume it's the stuff that we handed over. So there's a form field deck. What does it tell me? Like street form field. That's a dynamic component. That should be okay. And it's the form field. Why do I hand over form field here? Let's try this one. Does not work, does not exist. What does it tell me here? In autocomplete. Yeah, it's the form component. Why don't I see it over here? This is the form field declarations. And the form field declaration has a form field declaration. I would call that the form component. And it has to be declared and it has to be handed over, because otherwise we're not getting anything. And now it turns completely red over here and it tells me that it is not declared. Haven't we done that already? Failed to compile. Ah, man. I think I'm going to pause the video here for a moment and just try to figure out what is actually going on. So, 1 minute, please. So I had found the error. The error was that in the form field, we had just renamed that to form component. I had to rename it to form component. And from this point on, everything is working fine. And if I am going over in here, I just hand over the form component that was declared. I just guessed there was a wrong reference. And now I don't need this thing here anymore. And I can go into the output, and it just shows that everything's actually fine. Now this might be a bit squished. It's not necessarily what I want. So I'm going into the right form input, and we have this main thing here, or I can, well, either on the main I can go like margin bottom and go like 20 pixels, or I can just go with MB, let's say 2, just for simplicity, and I'm using Bootstrap again to do that. So now we're actually fine. We have set up the form as we wanted it. Currently, there is the submit button is missing and the cancel button is missing. So I would actually like to put that one in. And down here, they're usually outside. Input type submit, if I remember correctly. And was it button type submit? I think it's button. And it should be a button anyway. And for the form, it would actually be good to have a configurable submit button text. So we're putting that one in. And then here, as an input, I'm going with the submit button text. That one's also public. That's of type string, and I'll go with OK as a default. And then there should also be a hash submit button because you might need it or you might not. And I could leave this one away and just go with true, because usually it's there. And then I have to also use that one and go with ngIf on the submit button text. And to make it more readable, always very important that we can easily find out where we currently are. So there's the OK button. I could style that one, put like button btn primary on it. Let's try that because we have Bootstrap installed here. I think it's btn and btn primary. And this should restyle the button and make it a bit more friendly. So now we're having a configurable form and we can work with that. So now what we have done is we have taken care about the display side of the form. And the other one is I want to be actually informed every time something changes on the form. And to do that, there would be two ways. One is on the form, go with an ng with just a change out of with the $event. So we're getting notified every time the form changes. And to be honest, this is not the way to go. And I'll explain to you why just for a second. So I write this public form has changed. It's void, and I can hand over data. Copy this console.log and data. So we're fine. So now every time the form changes, it should actually write into the console log. And it does that and it doesn't. And let's just clean the console log to show you what I'm talking about. So if I click in here and I change something, I actually expect output. But this is not happening down here. The only time the output happens is if I lose the focus on an input field. And also the data that comes out is like, there's this source element, and it just tells me what changed the last one was, and it's sort of not really usable. It's not exactly what I want. So I'm going to remove that one. And instead of using that stuff on the form, unfortunately, I have to use it on the specific input component. And then I have to here go with an output. And this is a public value has changed. And this one is an event emitter, actually of a key value pair. The reason is you want the name and you also want the value. And this already shows me that there is something missing here, because next to the name I would actually also be able to preset the value from the outside. And in here, for simplicity reason, currently I would go with an array that consists of string and string. It's just for simplicity. You can settle on any form that is what you need exactly. Event emitter string. So, and now I can on the form input put a change on the form input. Let's go with value has changed $event, and write the corresponding method for this thing. Public value has changed, doesn't do much, return much, and I get the data. And then I can go with this dot value has changed dot emit. And first I would go with this dot name, because I want to know which form element has changed. They're configurable, so we need to hand that over, and I also have to hand over the value that is now inside the I could actually maybe go with data here, not this dot value, because it's never set unless it's bound by ng model. So let's just try this thing here, and this might be just a string, and value has changed. Let's use double here, so I need another name. Value with value changed, and I have to write that one into the HTML. And there's still an event, a change event. So let's go with any here. Take the data and just figure out what's in here. Data. And then comment this line out. just for the moment. And now every time the form changes, I can listen to this thing here. And to do that, I would have to go and declare it. And to do so, I go down here and I go into the outputs. And yeah, I need to hand over a event emitter that I am writing. And I just copy this entire line here. I declare this as a variable on top of the file. And then I just hand this over. So usually you would go with something like this, but yeah, I think that's necessary. Otherwise, the shorthand form would be possible by just removing this stuff if it's declared inside the same block. So now I copy the outputs stuff and I just hand it over to each and every single one of them. And then I have to subscribe. Init value has changed. Emitter. This dot value has changed dot subscribe. And I have this shared base component here, and its purpose is to be able to create subscriptions, and Onistroid will automatically unsubscribe. Everything's fine here, and then I can go with this dot subscriptions dot add, and I can just add the subscription that I have here. So every time I type in the form right now, if it compiles, which it doesn't, always funny, form has changed. So this is form has changed, does not exist. Yes, we have removed that before on the form. We have this change, which I showed that it was not useful. So I removed that one and we're good. Now it's building successful, and every time now I change something in theory, it should hand that out, which it doesn't really do. So let me see. So we're setting we're declaring a value has changed event emitter, and we're handing the value has changed event emitter over to the form components. And the input component here does not emit it at the moment, so we're currently stuck here, and we're just writing to the console log to find out what was actually emitted. Currently it does the same thing with the changes before on the form, and this is not really good because to find the value, the changed value in here is just a hassle. But what you can do, on the other hand, is there's this banana in a box ng model operator that binds the thing to the value. So every time this thing changes, the value changes. And now I'm not really worried about this state parameter over here anymore. because I just want to be notified whenever a change happened. And then instead of data, I just go with this dot value. So now I'm still on the level of the individual input, but every time I change something here, in theory this should fire, which it doesn't. Same game again. It just fires if I am losing the inputs. So the solution for that would be to, instead of go with change, there's something else in here. There's the ng model change. And remove this thing here. So now, are we better? Yes, we are. So here's the thing. I don't want to just console log this here. I want to hand it out, and I go with this dot value, and we're set. So now every time this dot value, it asks me to, what was that? Oh yeah, sorry. Can't emit the two values, but it's an array, so we're doing this thing here, and we should be good. So now every time I write something out, I get the change of the individual entry that I have, and this is already useful, but it also sucks. And the reason is I just want an object that has like everything that is in here. So what I'm going to do is now something that is a bit hacky. On the form components, I write a function that subscribes to those specific form events. It's actually the same thing that I have done over here. And I'm going to subscribe to the event emitter and going to collect all the data and then send those out. I could actually put it in a service, but it's in a different place. I just have this feeling that it belongs together. I go with an array of those event emitters. And the reason is like not all of the inputs that I'm having inside my form, they might not all contribute to a common output object. If there's something in here like a checkbox to enable or disable the address section, this has to be handled differently. It also has an event emitter, but it's just a different type. And I can actually hand those over and we're fine, but I have to do it manually. So for the moment here, on the start page, I'll go with value has changed emitters. And the special thing here is I'm going to declare this as an input. And the reason is I am going to hand on the page that I own, I'm gonna hand those over as well. And this is an array of the value has changed objects. And then inside the form on implements on init, I can sort of do the same thing that I have done before. So I would go with, I just handle the stuff that I'm having here. So I think I can, yeah, this dot, call the stuff that we had before, and in here I'm going to extend shared base component. It's the same thing with the unsubscribed stuff. And in here I go for let value has changed emitter of this dot value has changed emitters. That's a single one. I'm just going to subscribe to every single one of them. This one's on the wrong place. X. This can go away, and then it's not this, it's the thing directly. Move this one back, and on top remove the empty line. So we're coming in, we subscribe to all these value has changed emitters, and we're just collecting the stuff. And the data here is of type string, comma, string. Might also be a key value pair, whatever goes for you. This needs rounded. Yes, and now I have this form data object that is of type any, that is just an empty object. And every time the thing changes, I just update this is the key, and this is the value. And then I also have to put this out. I go with output, and I set the public value has changed. So we're now on the form, so we just call it value has changed, and it does not emit a string, it emits any, and it's not an array, it's just an object, and this is new emitter of type any. That doesn't do much for the moment, and every time we have updated the data, I also go with this dot value has changed dot emit, and I just go with this form data and hand this out. Then right here I don't need to console log it. I might for debugging purposes, but not right now. And in here, wait a minute, form value has changed. We need to subscribe to this thing here. This is on the page. One with the rounded ones. I don't need this one because it does not exist anymore. I can remove it. And what I need is this thing here with the data that is actually any in this case, and I just go with console log data. It's actually, this time it's the form data. So yeah, so now we should be good. I go back into the code, and now every time in theory when I type here, I get an object out that just grows and shrinks with every change I do. And if I click on the OK, this should be a separate stuff on the form. So I go with click here, submit form. Let's go with let's do this thing here, and void. So this is the click event for when the form was submitted, and for this I need submit form. That can actually be any or even type void, because it's just a click event that just notifies the outside that the form was submitted. And then I can go on this dot submit form dot emit, and it's empty, so we just throw it out and we're good. And then on the page, submit form. First one, I collect the data, and then in the second attempt, I just notify the outside. You already have the data, so I can go with this dot data is data, and the data here is public data of type any, or something specific, because you actually know what the form is about. So you can go in here, and yeah, we're actually good. So on the submit form here, I can also go with data, and that should be good. Now it's not data, it's this dot data, and we're done. Good. So I have my form. I can write in here anything I want, house, number, street, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I click OK, it goes submit form, and from that point on, you can do whatever you want with it. And we're done. And we have now set up forms that can actually be set up dynamically. All you have to do is write such a form field declaration. It's a bit complex, but as you have seen before, once you have the structure of it, there's also the possibility for autocomplete. You can just copy the things over. You could, instead of the form input component, so let me see what was actually already prepared. There's this form input, there's this shared form. Let's say we do it as a text area component, and I just hope that yeah, they're slightly different, but this thing is called form value changed emitter, and we should be good again. Yeah, now we're here. It's a key value pair. But now you can, just to show you, for every type of input field, you can, write your own component, write multiple of those, like, a date picker with a date selection box or without. You can also put that over as a parameter or not. It's actually up to you what you're going to do with it. And yeah, just get the thing running. And as an example, in here there might be things like is it mandatory? Is it enabled or disabled? And let me just see on the input what it is here. Disabled, as an example, would be a good field. Let's put in disabled. This is a Boolean, and it's usually not. So default is false for this. So now here's the important point. I have just added a disabled field, and already this disabled field is available on all the declarations we have done. You don't need to hand it over because the default thing was set. But I could go with disabled true here, and if I go back into my form, the first one is disabled. I can't write into it. I can go with mandatory. I can actually build up the form in the way I like, and to just write this stuff in the end, get it to look the way you need it to, and then just to create the form of it is in the end is actually it just came down instead of writing all this stuff. We're talking about reusability. Is actually just to write such a section with the parameters you need. That is all there is. And yeah, it just massively decreases the development time for forms. You can play around with this form value has changed emitter if you put in a checkbox or something to activate the second thing here. And just as an example, there was this there is this active flag in here that I can set to false. And if I go back to the page and it renders it, the address section in theory should be completely gone. We have not implemented that, so let's do that quickly. Inside the form, there's this field set that we're going over, and now I would just to get it working better, I would also put that into an ng template, because this allows you then to put an ng-if onto the field set. It's not allowed to have an ng-for and an ng-if on it. But in here, I can go with form field set dot active, and now the second one shouldn't be active. It should actually the address section should disappear for some reason. Now we have two OK buttons. I think the OK button is still in the field set, which is the wrong place. Another bug found, so we moved that, or yeah, just something that I'd written before. And we're good. So there's just one again, and if I go back into the page and the code, and I either remove this line or set it to true, I am done again. And this can also be done during the runtime to activate or deactivate the stuff. And the nice thing is down here, I really get this form data object that corresponds to the stuff inside the form, and I can work with that. So that's really nice. Yeah, then one thing that has to be said, form, if you have a mandatory field and you have not written anything into the input, the form might be invalid. So next to the form, next to the value has changed, you might also have to put in like a form validity emitter that just triggers if the specific input we're writing on is currently valid or not. You can collect it sort of in the same way and hand it over, and the form then in the end tells you whether your form currently is valid or not. It has a bit of the same drawbacks as before with the date or with the data that is inside the form. If you have how do you say, it validates only on lost focus usually, but there's ways around that, and you can handle that. That's one thing. And then one thing you also might not want to do is sort of set up those value has changed emitters by yourself. Currently, we only have one. We have not, have a checkbox inside there that reacts to it, and there's also a possibility to let the form do it yourself by itself. So on init of the form component, you loop over, where is it, all the form field set declarations, and inside the form field set declarations you go over the form field declarations, and you just, on the form component, there's an input or an output section, and you just write your emitter into there. It does that automatically. You automatically subscribe to it, and then you don't have to. You can actually leave that part away as well. So that's just, some improvements that you can do to this form construct to really get it working. Yeah, so I think that's about it. So forms are explained. Yeah, it's quite a long tutorial, I guess. It took me some time to get it done, but it's really helpful. Yeah, and I really hope you have fun with that stuff. And as always, I wish you good coding. Goodbye.